entrepreneur or an aspiring entrepreneur having a full-time job, I think irrespective of them being related to each other, can give you a certain kind of stability to pursue your creative endeavor, that creative venture in a way that you may be more comfortable being bold, taking risks in growing your idea into proper venture or proper business.
Welcome to another episode of the Lucrative Africa podcast. I'm Dami, and I'm going to be your host again for today's episode. And with me here today, I'm going to be speaking with Kevin Rugamba. Kevin Rugamba, creatively known as Keru, is a DJ, cultural programmer, and curator of African music and culture with a deep passion for telling stories and connecting people. He's the founder and creative director of Pineapple Undertones, a music-first creative platform that champions and explores African culture and creativity. He is also the co-founder of Bridging the Gap, a platform connecting creatives across disciplines through networking and curated learning experiences that foster collaboration, knowledge sharing, and professional growth. There's more to his bio, but I'm going to let him do the rest of the introduction. So, Kevin, I'm handing over the mic to you. Can you tell us a bit about yourself, a bit more about yourself and the work that you do?
Sure. Thank you, Damilola. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me on your platform. It's exciting to see such an initiative and to share my story on it. To share a bit more, I think beyond the bio that you shared, I'm East African. I say East African because I was born in Kenya and I'm of Ugandan and also Rwandan heritage. So I kind of have a more regional identity, and that also informs the scope of my work as a creative. Uh, Having spent um, quite so many years now working as a creative in East Africa, specifically in Kigali, Rwanda, but also being able to hop back home to Uganda, to Kampala, and also connect with people in Kenya. So more broadly, I would say I'm an East African creative with a strong foundation in music, but I have sort of broadened my interests to the creative sector more broadly because I do truly believe in the power of collaboration. And if we're to look at the cultural and creative industry, we have to look at how the ecosystem, right, more beyond your own sort of specialization or field, how that ecosystem can be built and how we can sort of connect the dots or bridge the gaps um, across the ecosystem. And this is a sort of revelation that I had while pursuing my master's in cultural and creative industries a few years ago now in London, where I got to connect with creatives from from other fields and really understand that we're all trying to we all kind of share a common goal, and it'll be easier or quicker for us to get there, to sort of that destination or to feel like we've accomplished that goal by joining forces. And so that inspired the the Bridging the Gap platform that I co-founded with my colleague Daniel, who in fact is a former student of mine from my time working at African Leadership University, and him coming from a fashion background in terms of creative ventures or creative businesses, and myself coming from a music background, us coming together to form this Bridging the Gap platform is a true sort of representation of what we are hoping to enable or to achieve with the platform, enabling different kinds of creatives to create and to co-create. And though I led with being an East African, I do truly also believe in Pan Africanism. Not only was I did I have the privilege of working at a very Pan African institution such as the African Leadership University, where I got exposed to students and staff from well over 30 different African countries. Uh, and the experience of leading community and culture activities within that space uh, truly deepened my passion for the continent more broadly. But even before that, as a child, as an adolescent, I grew up in different African countries, literally north, south, east, and west, which I guess was the foundation for my love for Africa as a whole, and even uh, going to university, doing my undergrad in the U.S. and getting to learn about the African diaspora, whether it was through the community and the students that I connected with and bonded with, or also some of the extracurricular activities I took part in, such as a drum and dance troupe called African Rhythms, where we explored Afro-Cuban culture, which shed light for me on the connections between Yoruba culture in mainland Africa and also its sort of distant relatives in Cuba, for example. That's a shout out to Daniel, my co-founder at Bridging the Gap, whose fashion brand is called Distant Relatives. Yeah, I hope I've expanded a bit on the bio that you shared.
Thank you so much. Very, very interesting story. And also, I mean, leading to the next question. So something I picked when I was reading your bio, I was going to go Google it, but I'm like, no, I'm just going to ask what it means on this call. But so first of all, how did your journey into the creative space, into music begin? But specifically also into cultural programming. What is cultural programming? That's a new term to me personally, and I will just leave it to you to explain what that is and how was your journey into this space. How where did it start, and how did it lead to where you are today? What's your story in general?
Right. So cultural programming. Well, what cultural programming entails is, you have as a role or as a sort of a a profession, you organize, you know, different cultural events. You plan and organize, produce different cultural events. So programming, not in in the sense of like software development or programming in a tech sense, but more like you put together programs for different kinds of cultural interventions. So in a way, what uh, what I did back at the African Leadership University as community and culture lead was an example of cultural programming. My mandate was to oversee a year-long program of cultural activities, of events, and so you think about different kinds of experiences that can that can enable or provide a culturally enriching experience for the student body or for the university community more broadly. And for me, I do consider myself a cultural programmer because I'm not just a DJ in the sense that I'm just showing up somewhere booked to DJ and I get to to play my set and then sort of go home. No, with the Pineapple Undertones platform, I have a lot of freedom to curate my own events for the community, and so there's a lot more input than just playing the DJ set, whether it's a theme or different aspects of the experience beyond just having a crowd come together and listen to music. Um, and even with the Pineapple Undertones platform, we do a lot of documentation of trends in African music, also showcasing the history of African music, and we create a lot of content such as mixes and even um, YouTube videos that we and playlists that we have available online. And even through that, there's a lot of themes that are explored, a lot of stories that we're telling about the culture, and so we're also programming in that sense. Imagine maybe like a deconstructed radio station. If you're to visit our Spotify or our Mixcloud or our YouTube, there's sort of a sequencing or programming of different content for you to explore. And even with the Bridging the Gap platform that I run as well, there are elements of cultural programming in that. We put on an event. We'll think about different aspects, different objectives, and different aspects we want to cover. And there's a lot of thought that goes into curating these experiences to help people explore culture, and have a deeper appreciation for culture just generally.
Thank you for enlightening me on what that means, because I had no idea. So anyone who is going to be seeing Kevin's bio, yeah, that programming doesn't mean, yeah, it's nothing related to software. It's more about just planning planning the sequence of events, of cultural events, or just the flow, how they go and what comes after the other, and just the program of of events in general. So thank you for explaining that to me. But then, yeah, also, I mean, how about your story? How did you find yourself getting into music? And I mean, again, into cultural programming. Like, apart from your education, you mentioned that you studied something related to that. You did that for your masters, and then also your undergraduate in the US, and then also just your experiences. But was there anything else that led to, were you always someone who was creative from the start when you were young, when you're a youngin, or what led you into music specifically?
Right. Well, I'd say that I've had a creative spirit for many, many years. And music was, again, the foundation, or was really where my creativity really started, I would say. Shout out to my parents for seeing the value and exposing me to music at a younger age. Whether it's uh, getting me to do like lessons, tutorials, learning some instruments. I remember the piano when I was very, very young, the recorder. But then when I was in my teenage years, picked up the guitar, started to learn the guitar. I was always a fan of music. I always enjoyed listening to music, and I'd love to sing along. Having MTV or Channel O on the TV, and just singing along to my favorite songs. Starting to collect, CDs. Not sure if people still know. I don't know about your audience if they know what CDs are. These days, everything is digital. But
They probably do. Even if they don't use it, they
it's a
probably have heard
throwback.
that from someone.
Yeah, I hope it's not too ancient, but yeah. So for me at a younger age, CDs were very much the core sort of um, uh, object, or item that allowed me to access this world of music. And I in high school, I joined the choir, so I was very active in terms of singing. In my choir, we had the opportunity to travel to different countries to partake in festivals, and I'd have the opportunity to sing solos. And I guess my choir director saw that I was really really passionate, and capable or skilled to an extent, which pushed me to keep exploring music further. Starting up bands in high school, and then sort of running concurrently to that. I started making CD mixes for my friends, my close ones, my family, I'd always just sit and imagine what songs they would like to hear on a playlist, burn that on a CD, and then my friends would be like, you should sort of curate the music at our party. And that led, one thing led to another. I started DJing our school dances or the proms, um, and then getting my first DJ controller, going into university with that, and starting to play for larger audiences, just having a passion for digging for music, a wide range of music, and sort of showcasing it or performing it as a DJ, while also now starting to perform live as a singer, as a rapper. I was just really exploring my musicality, and, so many different aspects of it. I was just really obsessed with music. Leading to again university, being a DJ, being in a hip hop and neo soul band, and in uh, the drum and dance troupe I mentioned, African Rhythms. So doing all three at the same time. Well, I still also did my studies and did have enough time to balance everything. So that was the foundation, I would say, of like my creativity, or how I really tapped into that creative spirit. Um, but then alongside that, even from high school, I was very involved in student government, and especially in like social chairs. So I'd be in my role would be to organize social events. So that I think is also kind of the genesis of this interest in cultural programming, because it's essentially the same thing. I'm responsible for a calendar of social cultural events to take place for the community, right? So I've always also had that passion back in high school, and then when I went to university in the US, I was very involved in the African Student Association. For 3 of my 4 years, I was on the board. First year as a social chair, so a similar role to what I had in student government in high school, and then the last 2 years as president of the association. And so even in such a role, you know, you're you have a lot of responsibility when it comes to really convening the community, and a lot of influence in sort of shaping up how the community engages um, like, with each other, and the kind of experiences, social events, and finding ways to really promote, celebrate African culture in a predominantly white institution in a very far away foreign land. So that also really made me a lot more proud to be African, and really in touch with my African identity as I was, doing pursuing my studies in the U.S. So I'd say, yeah, all of those things have just kept, you know, growing and evolving into new things, um, and yeah, following my undergrad, moving here to Kigali, to Rwanda, and getting to work with the African Leadership University, getting to continue to bring the community together around events, but then also pursuing my music as a side hustle. I was inspired to come up with a platform through which I could explore my curiosities when comes to African music, and also hopefully package what I learn in a way that others can also to learn from, and also get inspired, find some inspiration from. And so that led to me establishing Pineapple Undertones in 2018. I, I I felt like I wanted to come up with a name for it that could allow this. to grow sort of independently from me as a person, as an individual, as Keru the DJ, and I'm honestly very glad that I did, because fast forward to now, it's not just myself working on Pineapple Undertones. We're a team of three, and we all sort of share this vision, and we're all working to sort of scale what started out as an idea into what we hope can uh, be a sustainable and innovative creative business.
Very, very, very interesting. I can see how everything fed into each other or led or leads to where you are today. Just it makes a lot of sense. And I mean, picking from that story, you talked about how you had worked at the African Leadership University and how a lot of your experiences there also influenced who you are today, starting Pineapple Undertones and bridging the gap, and just you're being able to interact with Africans from all over the continent. So, but beyond that, it also meant that you were working full time. So you had like a 9 to 5 for a number of
Yeah,
years. So, first of all, how would you say that? So, two questions. How would you say that having that 9 to 5 work fed into your the role you have today as a creative entrepreneur? So did it have any influence? Does it help you, the knowledge you got, the experience you got from that full-time role? And then two, you also talked about the fact that you were balancing, being a DJ on the side of your full-time job. And I think that's how a lot of creatives tend to start out. So you are doing something else and then you just start building your creative business on the side or practicing whatever you're doing on the side. So but then there's the issue of balancing your time. So how did you also deal with that, being able to pursue that creative practice while doing that? And then also, how did your job feed into your who you are today as a creative entrepreneur?
yeah. So I kind of see the two questions as similar, as sort of like one question. It's really about the main, the full time job, and then your creative endeavor, your creative um, passion or hustle, and how to balance, and how maybe the two kind of feed into each other. I'd say as an entrepreneur, or as an aspiring entrepreneur, having a full time job, I think irrespective of them being related to each other, can give you a certain kind of stability. One, first and foremost, to pursue your creative endeavor, um, or, that creative venture in a way that you may be more comfortable being bold, taking risks, because you know that the decisions you make aren't necessarily affecting whether you're going to have a place to stay, or you're going to have enough food to eat. If you have that full-time job, assuming you're paid, salaried, or you're making a decent living from that full-time job, you have you feel, I think, more comfortable, yeah, taking risks in growing your idea into a proper venture or a proper business. I think, as opposed to just jumping straight in and just focusing on that, you may be more um, cautious about certain decisions that you're going to make. So maybe for a certain time period, that is good. That gives you the time to really try out different things and not be too, again, not to be too cautious, not be too scared to fail. Um, because if you fail, you still have your basics covered, or you have those comforts, which can be a luxury, obviously, and it is a luxury in a sense. But so in a certain span of time, it can give you the space to really um, fail forward or fail fast, as you really try to figure out how your creative endeavor, your creative hustle can work, depending on what you're trying to solve with it. And so that's definitely something I'd say that I experienced, knowing that I had that stability of the full time job. I was able to try different things out with Pineapple Undertones, think outside the box, and not be too conventional, and really try to think of how this platform could kind of stand out, and offer something new. In my context as well, with it being a platform, a creative platform that champions African culture and creativity, African music, culture, and creativity, working at African Leadership University was quite an ideal sort of environment to um, to gain inspiration while connecting with my colleagues, connecting with students, and learning more about different sounds coming out of different parts of the continent that I may not have been aware of. Um, and then also, I'm grateful that the that that African Leadership University welcomed my my creative endeavors with Pineapple Undertones into the space. Getting to DJ at some events, and even getting to do workshops um, at at the school during events such as Growth Week. Getting to try out different workshop ideas that I had with Pineapple Undertones. So they did really feed into each other in a sense. Maybe not everyone's lucky to be working full time in the same industry or the same sector that their creative or their entrepreneurial venture lies, but yeah, I would say I was fortunate to find a lot of synergies, and even getting to work with some students on Pineapple Undertones, having them get some experience in that space as well. And as I mentioned earlier, when it comes to bridging the gap wouldn't have um, come about if it wasn't for African Leadership University bringing myself and Daniel, an alumni of the school, together. So yeah, I've been quite blessed with how the two have have worked together. But yeah, I would say having that stability of a full time job, and that enabling you to not think too much about the decisions that you're making with your venture, because it allows you just to take more risks and to be bolder and to dream bigger. In terms of balancing the two, I did that in my 20s, as young. You have the energy. So while you have that energy, do what you can with it. And you'll get your sleep, but yeah, just know that the youthful energy can carry you through such a period of balancing between the two. Fortunately for me, uh, as a DJ with Pineapple Undertones, most of my engagements were either on the weekend or at night, so they didn't clash with my 9 to 5, right? So there wouldn't be too much overlap, anyways. So that's how I was able to balance the two.
I think this, from what I'm picking, is like the specific environment that you found yourself in. It's a very unique one, and it really, I think it really facilitated you blending those two things together, as opposed to where you have, I don't know, someone who wants to, I don't know, be a visual artist, but then their full time job, they're working at a hospital. Like some of those have a little more of a disconnect, but for you, because of this, the kind of job you had, you were able to still bring some of those things into your role and express it there, and that really helped. And then also, as you said, the fact that being a DJ, for most of the gigs you'd get would be in the night, so it's not really clashing with anything. So you didn't need to do too much of time management, except maybe for some prep beforehand or something, preparing your playlist and all of that. I don't really know how that goes. I don't know how the process goes. But I believe you still had to do some prep, but somehow you're able to manage that. And then, of course, as you said, the youthful energy, it really helps to drive you to be able to complete those things in a limited amount of time. And I mean, I do agree on the fact that yeah, having a full time job gives you some sort of security that helps you still be able to take
Yeah,
risks, because you know you're not depending on that thing to get your next rent. At least not yet. You have something where you're going to get your salary from,
yeah,
and yeah, it definitely
yeah,
definitely helps with experimenting. So, and I mean,
yeah.
still
I
on the
think I
point of,
just want to add.
yeah,
I just wanted to add something. I mean, in terms of the two kind of worlds blending together, I mean, there's room to be creative about how to find opportunities for those worlds to blend. Your day job, like your full time job, and your venture may not exactly be in the same sector or the same industry. But with the example you gave about working full time at a hospital and maybe being a visual artist, well, not sure which kind of visual artist you meant specifically, but let's just say you're a graphic designer, as in that's your side hustle, or your creative venture. It could be that you look to tap into the marketing department at the hospital. You see how you can work with them to to improve their visual aesthetics, for whether it's for their digital presence. So if they have a social media page and they want to advertise something or display, post something, you could work with them um, as a graphic designer, or maybe designing different posters, or visual aids information that goes up in the hospital. So you could always kind of find these opportunities. I mean, just to give some more context, um, while at African Leadership University, I had taken on different roles, right? Um, and not all of them were exactly like creative. Not all of them were like the community and culture lead role that I had for the last 2 years of my time there. Before that, I was I managed the English language learning programs, which isn't as which doesn't blend as much with Pineapple Undertones, but in transitioning from that to a community and culture lead role, which I was the first to be in, I kind of saw an opportunity to get closer to what I was really passionate about, interested in, while still making it relevant to the university. And so I found more and more alignment as I went on.
definitely. And I mean, speaking still on the whole education side of things. So you also talked about the fact that you pursued further studies. So you did a master's in the creative industries. So I think one thing that I have seen, or that at least that I feel like is a bit common in the creative space, is like some sort of how do I put it? Let's say not negativity, but something close to that towards education or formal education. And I think this usually stems from the fact that most of the time the things that people end up studying are usually not what they might want to be doing. They probably want to be pursuing something different from that. And so there's some sort of I don't know, I don't know what to use, maybe, but yeah, let me just say negativity for now, for lack of a better word, that is attached or associated with formal education, because it's usually like something that's holding you down from doing what you really want to do. But then I think you are proving that okay, there might be a reason to pursue further education. So I would like to know like what inspired you to go get a master's, and what role do you think that education plays in the life of a creative entrepreneur or just a creative in general?
Yeah, well, so I'd say I've heard that that perception that you shared that people have of formal education, and yeah, sort of the statistics around how many people end up in the field that they actually studied. I'm not sure if that is mainly for undergraduate or if it also applies to postgraduate. But my understanding of my approach to postgraduate education, whether you're pursuing a master's or a PhD, is that you take some time after your undergraduate to get some work experience, life experience, and give yourself the time and the room to really understand what you want to go pursue further studies in. And so, once you do get to that stage, you've applied for the program, so you're admitted and you're there. There's a lot of life and work experience you've had that you can contextualize in the classroom, or while doing your research in the postgraduate phase, in postgraduate education. I think there's a more focused you're more focused, and I think you should be clear about what you want to get out of it, which isn't always the case with undergraduate. I got a bachelor's in international relations, um, and it was a focus on international development. Okay, maybe to an extent you can tie in what the work I've been doing in the creative industry with international development, because there is an aspect of job creation and really building the creative economy. But I wouldn't say, if you checked back in with me at graduation of my bachelor's and you told me what I'd be doing right now. Sure, because of the all the creative spirit, the creative passion that I had back then, I think I'd be delighted to find that I've reached here. But I don't think that I was aware that that's where I was going, if you know what I mean. Like, I think I was destined for another kind of profession or career. Um, but what going back to school, and specifically, going back to pursue a master's in cultural creative industries gave me was a real proper foundation, and like the knowledge that has come before, the knowledge about this emerging industry, a lot of like the theoretical approaches to it, but then also I had some courses that allowed me to really put things into practice. So, for example, I had an optional module that I took on, which was a workshop-based module on the entrepreneurial opportunity in arts and culture, where each student had to bring a creative idea to to the workshop for that semester, and we were workshopping that idea, like really taking it from an idea and building it out into what it could look like as a creative business, as a creative venture, entrepreneurial one at that. I was lucky to have a very concrete idea with Pineapple Undertones at that stage. It had been um, 3 years of Pineapple Undertones by the time I entered that module. And so I had something very sort of tangible with lived experience, with trial and error, that I was able to sort of take through that process, guided by someone that's trained, that's sort of well informed, and that has even since then been mentoring me, and giving me advice on what I'm doing and where I'm trying to take things. So even those relationships that you nurture with staff, with the faculty, and some of the experiences that they can give you, even work experience that you can get researching with them, and gaining a lot more um, academic exposure, or like an academic sort of perspective on your field, which can then really complement the more practical, real life um, examples, or experience that you get working in your field. It may not be for everyone, but for me myself, I have always valued a nice balance between academia and the real world, and real, like, practical knowledge gained from experiences. Again, I was working at a university before going to pursue my further studies, so I have been sort of straddling between the two worlds. Um, but yeah, it gave me a very solid foundation, and I may not always have the theories or the terminologies at the top of my head, when sort of processing different things or really trying um, design a certain experience or come up with a new strategy. But there's some things that you pick up from your studies that kind of become second nature. um, so it really just shows that you've received a good training, a good education and foundation. And I think beyond that, being in such spaces, the networks, your peers, your classmates that you come across, you get to share your ideas with, hear from them, and get inspiration from them, have them sort of peer review or your ideas, what you're trying to do, and then you now become part of this network of fellow creatives that are also trying to um, change the world, to do something different. And these are people you can lean on for support, and they can also lean on you.
Definitely very insightful points. And yeah, I can see how your education feeds into the work you do today as an entrepreneur. But then also, I mean, speaking of entrepreneurship, as a DJ, founder of Pineapple Undertones, co-founder of Bridging the Gap, so what does creative entrepreneurship mean to you? And how have you been navigating the business side, specifically the business side of the creative work that you do?
What does creative entrepreneurship um, mean to me? Um, entrepreneurship to me, first and foremost, means problem solving. I think you identify a problem and you try to find a solution to the problem. And then as you're trying to find the solution, or maybe after having found the solution, you figure out how you can monetize it, how it can benefit not only yourself but others, in different ways, especially I guess financially, monetarily. And so you're identifying problems within the creative sector, the creative industry, and tapping into your creativity to find solutions, find opportunities, to add more value to the sector. I think that's what creative entrepreneurship means to me. With regards to the business side of things, I mean, I'll be very honest. That's something that I'm still um, figuring out. I think for me, I've always just been more passionate about taking an idea and bringing that idea to life, um, and just it's almost like just training a certain muscle that you have in your brain or your heart. I don't know where that creativity lies. I mean, I guess it is in your mind, but just the process of coming up with ideas and really building them out into um, an experience, building it out into a product, building it out into something of like. But yes, as I've started to do to scale these ventures and really depend more on them, I've had to think more about the business side of things. And I think the one thing with the creative sector and a lot of our output, a lot of the products or things that we actually put out there, a lot is intangible. So it's not like a sack of potatoes. So you shouldn't feel too shy to really name you know a big price. If you really feel like you've put in a lot of time, put in a lot of work, building out as a DJ, let's say building out this whole crate of music, or you really do take your time thinking about what kind of events you're booked for, what's the audience, what kind of experience you can give them, with the set that you're hired for. If you feel like this X amount is how much you want to you want to be charged, I'd say, go for it, and you have to sort of have that self assurance or that confidence that you that is really the value of the work that you've done. Now, the one thing that I've realized more recently, and in terms of really building out a business, is you have to think about reinvesting in your business. You do an event, don't think about, and you make some money. Don't think about just all of the profits just going into your pocket. Maybe you decide 50% is going to go back into your business, 50% is going to go to you, or 25% to you, 75 into the business. You really have to think about how you're now creating that loop and really reinvesting in, because then through time you're building up a good fund that can then enable you to scale the business, and that's something that we've paid more attention to and really focused on with Pineapple Undertones over the past couple of years, and also now as Bridging the Gap continues to grow, that is something that we're also sort of taking more seriously. And if that means some sacrifices in the in the short while or in the interim, if it means that your business, your venture, your idea is really becoming a business that has a fund, that has the means of financing itself, then it's a win. It's a win at the end of the day.
So it's all about, yeah, I would pick sustainability and
Yeah.
sustainability, sacrifices, and just navigating things as you go, because you really can't know everything from the start. But then also, like, can you tell us a bit more about, like, what does a day in your life look like? What are the processes? So say from the beginning of when, I don't know, someone reaches out to you, or a company or an event planner reaches out to you saying they want you to DJ at their event for so and so day. How does it start and how does it end? What's the whole journey? What does it look like for you and for, I don't know what to call it now, customer or user, or yeah, what does it look like for you and for the person you're working with? Can you give us an overview?
So yeah, in terms of as a DJ, if I'm approached and booked to play at an event, let's say corporate event, the launch of a product, for like a corporate a company, they reach out to me having this event, let's say 2 weeks from now, um, would need you to play for 2 hours, to ask me for my rate. I'll give them my rate. If they're okay with it, we lock it in. Now I know I have that to look forward to. Now I can decide, okay, how much am I really going to invest in ensuring that I'm giving them a nice tailored experience. I'm not just playing a set that I'd play just anywhere else, because I do like to tailor the experience to the audience. I think the person booking me, the company booking me, should also do their research in terms of who they are trying to hire. I mean, I'm not the only DJ um, in the city, or that's probably on their radar. So first, I trust that they've done some due diligence, they've done their research and decided they want to work with me. Okay, great. Now, I'll take my time I'll ask them about the audience or the demographic, what kind of event it will be. If it's, more of like a cocktail with, maybe some older people, I don't know, more affluent people. Okay, I'll have an idea of the kind of vibe that I want to curate for that. So I'll take some time over the couple weeks, maybe set aside um, an hour or two every other day to slowly sort of put together a set, drawing from my existing library of music, but then also now taking advantage maybe of this opportunity to dig for some new sounds similar to the ones in my library that I think align with that vibe. Um, so yeah, it doesn't have to consume your day every day until that event, but then of course you have different gigs that are happening concurrently, so you kind of split up your time in that way, whichever one is coming up sooner or maybe is at a bigger scale or a bigger set, or maybe is a bit more um, niche or specific, or really needs to be tailored. Those different things sort of inform what you prioritize more, what you set aside more time for. Um, and yeah, and then that is happening, but then you're also organizing your own events and you have a calendar. Maybe you have some people that you need to meet throughout the week. Maybe you're also looking to get sponsorship from that same corporate that is hiring you for your event. So, like for example, today, this morning, I was at a company's office, speaking with their sales office for some sponsorship for an event we have coming up. And then, have the time to speak about my creative endeavors on this podcast. And afterwards, I have a couple of gigs this weekend, so I have some time to prepare for my sets for the weekend. Um, and while taking on some other tasks, some admin, marketing, designing posters. And so yeah, you just find yourself with different tasks, and you just have to divide up your time. But again, it also depends on what you're trying to what you want to get out of something informs how much you need to put into it, right? Like if you really want to dream big and really do something unique and something special, then you do need to put in, a lot of thinking and a lot of time and hours to get that out of it.
Thank you. Sounds like an interesting process that you have. And I want to pick on one specific part of that process, which is something that for you, I think it seems to happen at the beginning, which is negotiation. And I think that that's a an issue that a lot of creatives have, especially when you're just starting out and don't have any experiences with, negotiating their rates, or how much they want to be paid for a certain gig. So for you now as a DJ or someone in the music space, what are the kinds of questions that you ask? So first of all, you talked about rates. So do you usually have a standard rate that you charge everyone, or do you charge based on some of these other questions that you've asked? So who is this event for? What's the vibe? How long is it going to be? What are the things that you put into consideration, and the kinds of questions that you ask when you are handling negotiations as a DJ?
Yeah, that's a good question. So yeah, I don't have a standard rate. Um, it does very much depend on who is inquiring, who would like to book me. If it's a big beverage company, you know, chances are they have a big budget. One thing that's useful to do is always to ask if there's a budget, first and foremost, just to maybe get an idea of what they were looking to spend. That can maybe save you a lot of time, because if their budget is a lot smaller than what you maybe typically charging, then you save yourself some back and forth. That's if you're in a position, to really kind of just stand your ground and walk away from some money if you feel like it's just not really worth the time, the effort, and even just getting yourself there, doing that 2 hour set, getting yourself back home, because there's costs, associated with all of that. But yeah, the in terms of rates, I guess yeah, there's a scale or sort of spectrum. You have bigger clients who you may assume you have a lot more. budget. It may be an event, like it could be a free event or an event that's ticketed. So those two could determine different kind of rates. I'm also comfortable doing sort of friends mates rates, as they call it in the UK, friends rates, family rates. Um, not for free, but like at least you can give a nice discount. In some instances, you can also have barter trading, right? If you're one kind of creative working with another kind of creative, maybe you'll need their services for something else, so you can agree to sort of barter in that way. I think that creatives should feel more comfortable with that. I think that's really a way for us to really grow collectively. But yeah, so I do. I would say I operate on a case by case basis, but you may decide that you list out what your rates are for different categories. So if it's like a big corporate, if it's a free event, maybe like a charity thing, or it's a wedding of like a friend or a family relative, you can decide to have these different categories, and maybe every year you add on a bit, it increases a bit. But in terms of rates, I'll have like the first 2 hours will be the same hourly rate, and then after the second hour, so in the third hour and beyond, maybe it's discounted. And so it's good to really be upfront and show people this is how much I charge. And sometimes maybe you'll decide to if their budget is a bit lower than what you would charge them, because it's important to tell them this is how much I usually charge, but I'll do this. I'll meet your budget. I think it's important to do that, because then they know what your true sort of worth or value is, and in the long run, then they don't sort of um, lowball you.
Yeah, I do think that last part of it, especially, it's really important, because it's like these people are your also the people who would refer you to others, and so you don't want them referring you to others with a lower price than what you would actually
Yeah,
charge just because you've done that specifically for them. So definitely makes a lot of sense. And I mean, you also talked about the fact that, yeah, when I asked the question about how you're balancing things and how you charge, like it's something you are still, you don't have like this one answer yet. You're still learning every day and figuring things out, and yeah, just navigating things as they come. But that then means that you probably have encountered some challenges on your journey being a creative entrepreneur. So, can you tell us some of like the biggest challenges that you faced being a DJ, being a co-founder of Bridging the Gap, founder of Pineapple Undertones, and how have you overcome these challenges, or still are overcoming the challenge? Because I'm sure maybe some of them are still like ongoing. Can you talk about some of those challenges?
people not following through with payments, chasing payments. So there's one thing, chasing payments for a while, finally getting the payment, you getting it at a point where it now even feels like free money. Can you imagine? But when you've just not even been paid, it's just so frustrating. One, yeah, chasing payments, not even getting paid at all, people just dodging your calls, having to do that chase. It really makes you want to hire an agent or manager to just take care of that kind of stuff. But I think what you learn from that, things like in your invoice. So make sure you're invoicing right, and you invoice ahead of time. And you have some conditions in there. Say you get a deposit, an advance before the actual event, and then you know maybe 24 hours or 48 hours after the event, you have to be cleared. If not, um, maybe there's a penalty or something. You know, put that on paper, put that in your invoice, send that off. That also, I think, makes them, whoever's booking you, you know, take you more seriously. But wherever you can, if you can get an advance, at least a deposit, before you start preparing for or start doing the work. Yeah, that's definitely been a challenge. I think also beyond that, it can be quite precarious. I mean, I'm now even thinking back to COVID, especially in my line of work as a DJ. Again, fortunately, I was still working at the university, um, which I guess was still going on, although things went virtual, but still had work to do, was still paid. But the DJ fund, you know, or the DJ income rather, dried up in that period. So I really feel for those who were DJing full time at that time. So something like COVID, God forbid something of that scale happens again in our lifetime or at all. But that can be a very, very big, disastrous kind of challenge when your means of survival, your means of income is directly sort of tied to people being around each other, in person. And when that's taken away because of some sort of health crisis, yeah, that can become very challenging.
I see. I mean, the first challenge. I feel like it's a common challenge across all creative practices. But yeah, I think the way you're handling is probably the best way to go. Just having some sort of written agreement or something saying that, oh, you have to pay this by a certain time, or at least you have to pay some sort of deposit or some amount of deposit before that. Because if not, if especially if you don't have some sort of written agreement somewhere, then people have the liberty to kind of just move around. They know that there's no actual consequence to this. There's no extra penalty I'm going to have to pay or fine or something. And it's what always having to include that in there to avoid going through all those issues. And then of course, I mean, the whole health issue in 2020 that affected so many industries. And yeah, it's something that hit everyone. But then, I mean, now talking about the things you are running, so particularly with bridging the gap, I mean, can you talk a little more about that gap that you are bridging? So what's the gap that you saw in the creative industry? So about like connecting um creatives across different industries. Talk to me a bit more about that gap, and why you thought it was important for you to start something to bridge it. I'm trying to play with the name, but the name
Yeah.
of yeah. I don't know if I'm doing a good
Yeah.
job at that.
No, no, no. You're doing a good job. Yeah, it's funny. I would say, I think first and foremost, what we noticed was that different creative fields or disciplines were sort of operating in silos. So you have the music people, you have the fashion people, you have the visual artists, uh, photographers. Those are gaps between those silos or between those fields. How can we create spaces for dialogue across, for connections across, so that people from these different fields can collaborate to put their projects together. A musician will always need a videographer, a photographer, a graphic designer, a fashion designer to for their drip, their costume design, or whatever they're gonna wear in their photo shoot or in their music video or even at a show. So how do we kind of break down those silos, and how do we get these different groups of creatives to come together, to learn from each other, to learn that we're we're all sort of trying to achieve the same thing. We just are focused on a different part of this one ecosystem. So in order to build this sector of this industry up, how can we create more how can you connect the dots more? So that's really, in its essence, the gaps that we're trying to bridge. Again, as a reminder, Pineapple Undertones, music first, music focused platform, distant relatives, the fashion brand. And these two sort of entities came together to birth bridging the gap. So so even just that process is an example of what is possible when you have different kinds of creatives coming together, and seeing that there's like a common goal or common mission, finding a common mission, and working together to make it happen. Because I have my um, own ideas or ways of approaching things. Daniel has his as well. But we're finding ways to have those things complement each other as we build bridging the gap. And so, I mean, we're less than 2 years old. So, as an answer to your question, that answer will continue to change as we evolve. But it was really another gap that we sort of saw in the let's say creative scene here in Kigali is that unlike other industries, like whether it's agriculture or tech, or I'll just use those two as an example. You see a lot of conferences, you see a lot of workshops, you see a lot of capacity building happening in those spaces. A lot of them, led by private sector, funded by public sector, but we've not seen enough of that in the creative industry. Although we're seeing that it's really, um, it's an emerging industry, and we're starting to see that in order to solve some of the continent's most pressing issues, whether it's um, uh, you know job creation, especially job creation, youth unemployment, right? Um, Job creation. Why not venture into this industry to create more jobs, right? And so I think we do need more. I would love to see more platforms like Bridging the Gap emerge, because then you're really bringing people together, creating this network that will help to develop an ecosystem where um, everything's sort of interconnected in a way that can really build a resilient and sustainable industry.
I see. You're truly bridging the gap. Yeah, I'm just going to quit on that. I don't think I'm getting the word play right. But yes, yeah, definitely agree on the importance between of collaboration across the industry, because just as you also mentioned earlier when we are talking about negotiation, so there might be instances where creatives need something that another creative can provide, and then in that kind of situation you can be like, oh, maybe I might not be able to pay you what you need, or what you would normally charge, but then you might need one of my services and in future for something. And so we can agree
Yeah,
based on that and exchange value in that space. So that's also another form of collaboration where it's like I don't need to hire someone else. Or, I mean, I'll still be working with you, but I may not be able to afford to pay someone else to do this. So maybe I would design something for you, and then you would perform at one of the events I want to host in the future. And that way we are still exchanging value, even if it may not be monetary per se. So that's also a
yeah,
form of collaboration. And I see
yeah,
why that's important to work on and improve in the creative space. But then, yeah,
indeed.
thanks for that. I would also want to learn a little more about if there are things that are there any like resources, tools, or things that have helped you with your work processes that have helped you be more efficient with the way you handle your clients, with the way you plan your time, and just manage your work as a creative entrepreneur.
I mean, I'll say that people are a great resource, in terms of advice that you can get from people, inspiration that you can get from people. You may be inspired by a certain person maybe within your field or in another field, and how productive they are, or maybe they've shed some light into their process, and then you can reach out to them and connect, and really just be open about learning from them, or sharing more about what your ideas are, and getting some guidance, getting some advice. I think people using people as a resource, I think for me is is um is very important. In terms of like optimizing my work processes, I mean, there's not like, I wouldn't say there's any particular sort of software um, that I use. I mean, I just use G Suite, let's say, like I use it for my day job, you know. So, whether it's like, Google Calendar, really blocking out time in your calendar, planning ahead for the week, whether it's on Sunday or Monday, this is the things I want to achieve. Okay, maybe something like Notion, where you can really break down, a project that you have, right, into tasks, into deadlines, and keeping yourself accountable. But yeah, these are resources obviously that are used across the spectrum in different uh, fields and work environments. I think approaching your creative um, venture in that same way is a way of kind of professionalizing, right, what you're doing, and that I think goes a long way towards you getting things done, being more efficient with your time, but then also I think you then get more. I mean, people can then take you more seriously if you really using those same kind of resources and tools to organize your work, to break down the different things that you need to do. Another resource I'd say for me is the concept. It's a Japanese concept, ikigai, which is this sort of it comes as like a chart. It's a concept that means a reason to live, and finding your life purpose. It's a way of finding meaning and purpose in your life as you consider your talents, your passions, and what you can contribute to the world. For me, that's sort of been a great compass. Just checking back in with it every you know few months, maybe half a year, where you're asking yourself what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and how what can you can be paid for. That has really just helped me get or stay true to what I feel is my destined path, and it's been a very important tool or resource for me to keep um, referring to.
Thank you so much. I personally I use Notion a lot, so I understand how helpful that can be. It's really helpful with planning, like just anything. And I mean, this is not this is not a sponsored advertisement, but yeah, you should try Notion. You should try Notion. Hopefully, it will become sponsored one day.
Hmm.
But yeah, thank you so much for those recommendations. And so now for like the last serious question, um
Hmm.
what pieces of practical advice would you give to young creatives who are also looking to start a career in the maybe as a DJ or just in the music industry in general, based on your experiences?
Find a way to stand out um, from the crowd. I mean, everyone wants to be a DJ these days. It's not easy. It's not easy, Everyone wants to be a DJ, but try to find something unique about the way that you do things, or maybe the way you approach it. I am very big on storytelling, and so branding is important. How you brand yourself and the stories that you're trying to tell to really connect to your audience and build your audience. Community is also very important. Really building a community, being approachable, accessible, to people who may, be your fans, may like what you do, you know, having conversations with them, really trying to understand what it is that they like about what you do. I think that really builds those bonds that can really form a community, which can help, you last a lot longer. I'd also say there's no such thing really as a bad idea, or don't restrict your all your ideas, or not all your ideas, but don't restrict many of the ideas to your head. I think you should feel comfortable having sort of a circle of advisors that you can reach out to, that you can share your ideas with, feeling comfortable sharing your ideas with them. Some ideas you may think are not as great, they may think are actually quite brilliant. So you don't know unless you really get out of your head, or get it out of your head and share it with others. um, and don't be scared to fail. Obviously, as we spoke about earlier, if you have a full-time job, it's maybe easier to take that approach, but you're only really going to get there through trial and error. And so you should embrace failure or mistakes as lessons that you learn to make you better, to make you stronger, and yeah, to help you build some sort of resilience in your journey.
Thank you so much, Kevin. So yeah, for aspiring DJs, aspiring people who are trying to build a career in the music industry, brand yourself. Do your best to brand yourself and stand out from everyone else. Try everything. Don't be afraid to try new things, to experiment, and then also, also don't be afraid to fail. Failure is it's part of the process of growth and building a successful career in the music industry. Thank you so much. And now moving on to just some less serious questions and just a few fun questions. So Kevin, if you weren't doing music, if you're not a
If
DJ,
not for music.
what would you be? Where else would you have gone? What other direction could you have found yourself going into?
um,
Yes.
I probably would have gone into like international development. Uh, that was yeah, education, education, international development. Both my
You'd have
parents,
followed education.
built their careers in international development. In fact, what I did my bachelor's in international relations was leading me down that path. But yeah, maybe teaching, full time as like a whole career, but also working in like a development organization. I don't know which sector specifically, but really, working to change people's lives for the better, whether in education or in other areas of development, I think.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, definitely it does make sense. So you're going to be following what you studied for undergrad. It wasn't something completely out of what you would have wanted to do. So it makes sense. But yeah, another one. Would you mind nominating two other creatives that you'd like to see or listen to
That's
as
a good question.
guests on this podcast?
Well, one would be Daniel. Has Daniel featured?
Not yet, but it's also on my list. So that's a double nomination.
Double nomination, yes. So we can also hear bridging the gap from his perspective. So we can bridge the gap between our perspectives. um, and actually, another member of the AOU ecosystem, I'd say Sibane as well. Love to hear
Ah,
from her.
also on our list. So yes, they're definitely going to
Yes,
make it here as guests. They will. But yes, thank you so much for your nominations and for letting us know what you would have been into if you're not into music. And yeah, thank you so much for joining me and having this conversation with me. It was really insightful, and I hope that people listening would find it just as insightful, especially people who might be planning to move or build a career in the music industry or become DJs as well, or become cultural programmers. Cultural programmers. That's a new term that I've learned the meaning of today. But yeah, where can
mhm.
our listeners connect with you and find you and your work online?
Yeah. So my personal pages on Instagram and Twitter/X are at feelgoodkru, at feelgoodkru, at Feel Good KRU all together. And for Pineapple Undertones on Instagram, at Pineapple Undertones, as it's spelled out. And on Twitter, at P underscore undertones. As for our mixes on Mixcloud, Pineapple Undertones. I think if you Google Pineapple Undertones, it's the first result. So it's our Mixcloud page to enjoy our mixes. You can also Google or search Pineapple Undertones on YouTube for our channel there. We have some live sets. We have a series called Sunsets where we shoot live DJ sets at sunsets in different African locations. And as far as bridging the gap, we're on Instagram at btg.africa.
Thank you so much for sharing, Kevin. And to everyone who might be listening, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with any other creatives that you think would find this episode insightful. And yeah, see you on the next episode of the Lucrative Africa podcast. I'm Dami, your host again. Have a nice rest of the day, wherever you may be listening from. Bye.